What is up, everybody? Welcome back to 925 Gamers, and today is Top 10 Tuesday. Last week we didn't have a video because we had a little bit of an emergency situation in which I had to redo this video, and you're probably wondering, well, what was the reason for that? Well, this was the reason. That is right, everybody. We got ourselves a cool little intro, and I'm super grateful to Anthony, the guy that I know that he put this all together. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This is actually a Christmas gift for me, so I'm super excited, and thank you, David, and your wife and kids and everybody who contributed to making this happen on the channel. So now we have an intro video, so I think that's pretty cool, and it's not super long, so you don't have to skip it. Please don't skip it. They worked really hard on this. Anyways, welcome to our top 10. We are going through actually our top 100 games of 2024. And the worst part of this video series has been the fact that I've been doing a lot of game nights since I started this. And I've been playing games that I'm like, man, this would have made my top 100 if only I had given it a little bit more time. But you know what, that's why I always try to save it for later in the year, because I know I'm going to play a ton of games. And so, for example, I played Kanban EV finally. Shout out to Etskiel, a friend of mine who taught me how to play the game, and Naya, they came over and played it with me. Amazing game. It definitely would have made top 100, I believe, but I don't know where it would have been. But anyways, let's just get into today's list. And if you are seeing this for the first time, consider subscribing to the channel. I make a bunch of board game content. I love making top 10 videos. I'm trying to be the king of top 10s, and so just go ahead and give this video a like. It helps with the algorithm, helps get this channel where it needs to go. And if you want to continue to support the channel in other ways, you can check out, I have a Patreon, I also have memberships here on the channel, and all that money just goes to help fund the channel and continue to help me do what I'm doing for the rest of the year. I've only been at this for like 2 years now. We're at like 12,000 subscribers. I'm trying to get to 20,000, but I'm really excited because I love board games and I love to just make sure that people have a good time playing them. So let's get started with the video. My number 80, because this is where we're at. We are at the 80s now, going into the 70s. Let's talk about Zois. This is a game that was introduced to me at Dice Tower East by a friend of mine, Daniel, and he was like, yo, we should play this game. It's really, really fun. It's like a negotiation game, and so I played it, and you play as these little animals. Everybody plays as like an animal faction that has their own unique power, but that power is interesting because every animal faction has a unique player power, but you use that as a negotiation. Like, you don't use the power yourself, you give it to other people to use, and you can use it as a negotiation thing. Like, you know what, hey, if you vote for me to go up to the next level, I'll let you use my power, and I'll give you one of my little chips so you can use it. It was pretty interesting, man, and I really had a great time playing this game. Definitely one of my favorite negotiation games, and I think that as you play it, you're basically like, have these little pockets, these little zones that have space for, a certain amount of players, and so everybody will put one of their, on your turn, you can place one of your animal tokens in there and take up one of the spots, and whoever has like a majority, it's like majority rules, whoever has the most characters there can kind of upvote one of their characters to move into the next zone. And then if there are other people there though, and it's maybe a tie, then you have to try to convince other people by bribing them, giving them money to try to boost you up, which is a pretty interesting concept for this game. I had a very fun time playing it. It's kind of hard to describe it, and I don't own the game. I wish that I did, but it's a very, very fun game. I think Zois is one of those games that I would love to take out and play with the right group of people. It's just a really, really fun time. Number 79, game that was added to my collection not too long ago, actually, as part of a big set of games that I received, and that is Dale of Merchants, the collection edition that has all of the expansions in it. Dale of Merchants is such a slept-on deck builder. Like, well, I think that, when it comes down to this company, Snowdale Design, I think a lot of people know them for like Lands of Gowser, and then some people knew them for like Dawn of Peacemakers when that had come out a while ago. But Dale of Merchants, I feel like, maybe it's just me, but I haven't been doing this for very long, and maybe it's not an underrated pick or a sleeper pick, but it's definitely one of those games that I feel like not a lot of people talk about. But I've really enjoyed this as a deck builder. It's such an interesting concept. You start the game off with, it actually has an app for like the phone, and you can actually take this phone app and you can design what kind of a game you want to play. Do you want it to be super competitive? Do you want it to be more chill? Do you want it to have high strategy? Do you want it to be mean? Like, you get to actually pick what kind of a game you want to play, and then after you hit the create button, it will design a game for you by selecting which decks would make the optimal choice for you. And you get different decks of cards. You take those cards, you shuffle them up together, and then you use that as a deck building game. There's a market, and then you take this market and you are buying cards and building your deck up. But the most interesting thing about this game, I think, is the way you actually play it, because it's not like most deck builders where you're doing damage to each other or trying to gain duchies from like Dominion. In this game, you're trying to build like stacks of numbers. So you're trying to do all the numbers in sequence. So you got to put down like a 1, and then in order, then the next one you got to put down a 2. You could either put a 2 or 2 1s. For the next one you got to put a 3 down, or you could put 3 1s or a 1 and a 2. And the point is that you're culling your deck by putting the cards in front of you, but then your deck starts to weaken, and then you have to buy new cards to put them into the deck and try to get those out, but you have to do them in numerical order. It's such an interesting concept for a game. And then all the while you're doing all of this, people are playing cards that are going to steal stuff from your hand, so that 6 that you were saving, you may get it stolen from your hand by the player, and then it's like, now I've got to try to figure out a way to get that back or try to get another one. It's such a good deck builder. I've had so much fun playing this. There's no wonder that it's made it up this far on my list at 79. My number 78 is It's a Wonderful World. This is an interesting game. It's an engine building game, and I played this at Dice Tower as well, and I was like, I've heard this is a really good game by a lot of people. I think it was Board Game Garden, and who else really liked this? Was it? I don't remember. Was it the Brothers Murph? I don't remember, but there's a lot of people who have like really sold me on this game, have said, I played this and it's a really good game. And so I bought it because of their recommendations. And after playing it at Dice Tower East, I was like, this is actually really good. So in this game, you are taking cards and you are basically drafting these cards and passing them around the table. Everybody takes a card, then they'll take the rest of the stack and hand it over to the next player. That draft will switch rotations or directions every other round, and it's a relatively quick game, but as you're drafting cards, you can either discard the card and gain the resources printed on it and use those cubes, because those are the resources, are all little cubes, and then you use those cubes to build these structures into your tableau, and then those things become scoring devices later on in the game. It says this one will score X amount of points for every one of these symbols you have. It's got a little bunch of iconography, but it's a really, really good game, and it's really not that complicated, and it doesn't take a long time to play. I really love It's a Wonderful World. Solid game. You really got to try this one. Very, very good. Next up, my number 77 is The Crew Mission Deep Sea. And I say Mission Deep Sea because that is objectively the best one of the 2 that have come out. Because there's The Crew Planet 9 and there's The Crew Mission Deep Sea. I believe objectively Mission Deep Sea is probably the best one. I prefer the space one. I just like the theme, and I like the little story and reading those little things. I felt like the submarine kind of like wasn't as good on that in that respect, but I haven't beaten the whole thing. But I really liked the original Crew. But they're both really good, and I think objectively the Deep Sea one is probably the better option. But it's basically a trick-taking game, but it's a cooperative one. So the idea of the game is that you have missions, and those missions are going to have certain people win certain cards, right? So like, for example, the person to the left of you, their mission might be to win the pink 4, right? So you have to figure out who has the pink 4 and how can we make it so that they win that pink 4 with the cards that are in their hand. And so there's 5 suits probably. There's yellow, pink, green, and blue, and then there's the shuttle suit. And so like, you're just playing trick taking, and then after you win a trick, if that person wins the trick they're supposed to, you pass the mission and then you go on to the next mission. But it gets vastly more complicated as you go on, and all the while you're doing this, you're not allowed to communicate at all. There's no table talk. You can't talk to one another. You just have to play the tricks and look at each other and give each other like, or like there's limited communication, because you can communicate a card in your hand, but you can only do that once per game. And then there's like a token you can flip over that will allow you to pass a card either to your left or to your right, and then once you decide which direction, everybody has to pass a card, so you can kind of try to manipulate it that way. But it's a really fun game. I really enjoy it. There's like 50 story missions that you can do. It's not a campaign or anything crazy. It's just trick taking, and it's really fun. The Crew Mission Deep Sea see. I really love this game. It's a great game. Number 76, we've got the Quacks of Quedlinburg. The Quacks of Quedlinburg is an amazing push your luck game, and I love playing it during like October, just because you get this big like potion pot, and there's like numbers in the center, and it has like a little spiral of like numbers. That's your score basically. So the way that you do this is by, you have a bag full of like little chips, and it's a bag builder. You're pulling chips out, and those chips have numbers. The number on the chip is going to move your little token marker up on that swirling track, which will give you numbers as to how many points you're going to have at the end of this round to buy new chips to put in your bag. And so the thing is, you're trying to move these chips up, and there are two types of chips. There are colored chips, which have all kinds of different abilities that do different things, and they don't count against you. And then there's white chips in the bag. The white chips in the bag, you can only pull out a total of 7, right? So there's some 1s, some 2s, and some 3s in the bag. But as you're pulling them out, the closer you get to 7, the closer you're getting to your potion exploding. So if you go over, you bust, your potion explodes, you lose your points that you have to grab the ingredients you need. But I think you get like an option. It's just a really fun game, and then you're just placing chips into this thing. This is like when you pull out a 3, you go 1, 2, 3, place a chip, and then the next chip you place, depending what number it is, you keep going around and around this swirl, and the higher up you get in your pot, the more points you get to gain points and keep track of your score, or points to buy chips with. And it's just cool to see all the different chips and what they do. So I love Quacks of Quedlinburg. Fantastic game. You guys got to play it. My number 75 is Dodo's Riding Dinosaurs. Let me tell you something. When I played this at Dice Tower East, we just had the perfect like environment and player group. And I think it was the perfect time at night because we were all kind of delirious because it was getting late. But this is honestly the best play of this game I've ever had. This game is Mario Kart as a board game. And I know that they had like Dungeon Kart Racing. I haven't actually tried that one yet, but I don't know that I've played a racing game aside from like Heat Pedal to the Metal that does it better than Dodo's Riding Dinosaurs. Like if you want like a racing experience, go Heat or Formula D or any of these other things. But if you want a Mario Kart experience, Dodo's Riding Dinosaur is your game. It's a racing game where you play as a dinosaur and you play cards from your hand that move you up a set amount of spaces depicted on the card. And those cards have abilities that will let you use like different power-ups. They have like a log that you can roll. They have a banana that you have to like toss it, or a feather. Well, I think the banana you have to like flick, or the egg you have to flick, and then there's like a comet you can drop on people. And so like there's different like mechanics to the item. So it's like the log, you have to just kind of like open your hand and let it roll out, and if it hits somebody, it says if you hit somebody they lose health. You have cards in your hand, which is the number of cards is also your health. So if you take damage, you lose cards from your hand, and then when you get to 0, you have to refill and you have to like lose a turn, something like that. It's a really fun game, man. Like Dodo's Riding Dinosaurs is my premier racing experience. I enjoy playing it. I love teaching it to people because it's such a wacky, fun time. You just can't take it too seriously. Don't play this with competitive people who get angry or like to get mad because somebody was in last place, they hit you with the banana and they switch places with you, now you're in last. Like you have to be ready for stuff like that. If you can't handle that and you're like, this is so luck based and this is not fun, you're not going to enjoy this game at all. So it's very, very lucky. There's a little bit of skill with the dexterity part of it, but it's just fun, man. It is a great time. That's my number 75. My number 74, I played this year at Dice Tower, and that's Leviathan Wilds. Shut Up and Sit Down has this as like one of their favorite games this year, and it's the best cooperative game for a lot of people this year. And you know what? It lives up to the hype. It really does. I got a chance to play it at Dice Tower, and I enjoyed it so much. Like, it's such a cool concept. So you've got this big book with a monster on it. This monster has a bunch of like little spaces that you like, little dots that you can climb up. And the goal is that you're a climber, and these monsters are good monsters. They're not bad. But what's making them bad is that they have these crystals that are growing on them that are corrupting them, and you have to try to chip away at these crystals to try to calm them down and restore their health. So that's the whole point of the game, and it's cooperative. So you're working together with other climbers to try to climb up this monster, take out the crystals, and restore their health, which is like a really cool concept for a game. And the movement is very interesting, but it's also like a deck builder. So you have cards and you play the cards. The cards let you do specific things. You slot a card from your hand that gives you the number on the card that you slot tells you how many action points you get. So in your hand, the only way I could describe it is kind of like a Marvel Champions a little bit, because it's one of those games where it's like you have to look at it's all about hand management, because it's like there's a card in here that has a 4 printed on it. I can slot that and get 4 action points to do stuff, or I could save that because it has a really good ability and maybe play a 2 as my action point and then play that card. So it's very, very interesting. The decision space is nice. There's a little bit of asymmetry within the players and the player powers and who's good at what and the decks you do, and you can mix and match stuff. It's a lot of freedom and a lot of options in this game that makes the game really, really interesting. So definitely a cool game you got to check out. That is Leviathan Wilds. My number 73, I think this is an underrated game. This is First Rat. A lot of people like that have played this game talk about how great it is, and there's a lot of people who like passed it up and said, you know what, I just don't think it looks very good, and that's understandable, but it is a good game, man. It kind of looks like, when you first set up the board, it kind of reminds me of like a Candyland looking game, but it doesn't play like that for sure. Basically, the way the game works is that you are going to be moving up the track a set amount of spaces, and then as you move up the track, you are allowed to either move up the number of spaces that you're allowed to move, or you're allowed to split your movement between 2 of your rats, because you have like 2 rats to start and you can get up to 4. And the whole point of the game is that you're just trying to make it to the moon, because the moon is made of cheese, and you're trying to build a rocket ship. You're trying to make ratronauts. That's why it's called First Rat, like first rat on the moon. And so you're making your way up this track, trying to gain the parts you need to build rocket ship parts. And then every time you build a rocket ship part, you score points. And if you build a whole rocket ship, you score a bunch of points. When you get your rat to the end of the track, they graduate and become ratronauts, and then you lose that rat for the rest of the game. But it gives you a ton of points. So it's all about scoring points, and whoever has the most points wins. But it's just fun because there's a lot of cool stuff you can do in the game. I'm not going to talk too heavily about it. It is very, very good, though. It's just one of those games that I think that if you can find this game like on sale somewhere, pick it up. It's worth playing. It's actually really, really fun. My number 72 is Trekking Through History. I've actually had the chance to play all the trekking games at this point, except for, oh, you know what? I didn't play Trek in the National Parks. I know how to play Trek in the National Parks. I just haven't played it yet. I got to get that game played soon. But I played Trekking the World, and I played Trekking Through History. I can tell you definitively at this point, Trekking Through History is definitely like my favorite of the 3, but I haven't played National Parks yet, so I can't officially say that. But looking at the gameplay, I think that Trekking Through History will still be my favorite. It's such a good game, and the way the game works is that you got this big clock. The clock has 12 hours, and the basic concept is that you're going to be time traveling through historical moments, right, through the timeline. And as you are going to be time traveling, you only have 12 hours to time travel. And you can only go back in time one time to start your trek, and then after that you have to only go forward. So what happens is that there's a row full of cards that have different dates with different moments in history, like real moments. Each card has amazing artwork. Each card on the back has really cool flavor text, but it's not just flavor text, it's actual like historical like information like you can learn from playing the game. If you're a teacher and you're looking for board games, like educational board games, all of the trekking series need to be in your classroom. Trekking the National Parks, Trekking the World, Trekking Through History, because it has so much historical knowledge in it. But it's an actual fun game. So what's happening is there's these cards, and the card has a date on it. You have to pick a card to take, and when you do, the card has little printed chips that you grab, like different colored chips. You grab all the chips of your color, and you put this card into a timeline. The next card you grab on your next turn has to be a time period after the last one you grabbed, because you can only go forward in time. And if you can't get another card to go forward and you have to go backward, that card, that timeline gets put together, and you put it off to the side and score it later on in the game, and then start a new timeline. The cool part is, the mechanic that I like is that each card has a number printed on it, somewhere between 1 and 4, and that's how many hours you're paying from your 12-hour total. So you have this little clocks that you go along this, you have this big clock, and you have like little pocket watches that keep track of how many hours you've spent. But the cool part is that like you could totally, like the turn order is determined by who's last in the little clock thing. Like, it's hard to describe all of this, but it's so much fun, man. Like, and I love the mechanic of, like, I could actually go maybe 2 or 3 times in a row because I'm being wise with how I'm spending my hours. And then once you do that, you do 3 ages of that, where it's like, I'm gonna spend my 12 hours, I'm done, I'm out of the round. Then you shuffle up the deck, get a new deck of cards with new era cards, and then you start playing your second round. And it's just 3 rounds. It's really fast, really fun. I really enjoy this game. And then those chips that you're collecting, those little colored chips, you're putting them on an itinerary that scores you points. And so you just keep track of your points every time you finish itinerary goals, or at the end of the game, all of the time traveling you've done scores you points based on the amount of cards in the timeline. Really fun game. I love this game. And now my number 71 is Obsession. Obsession was a new to me game. I played it with my wife. I get it. Like, I get why. Now, granted, it's not and I'm not speaking about production quality, because the production quality on this game is great. Everything looks really nice, and the pieces are very Victorian England, very nice looking pieces. But at the end of the day, you're like building an estate. You're like a faction of a family in Victorian England, and you are like, you have an estate. Maybe it's not even Victorian England. That's what I think of when I see the game. But you have an estate, which is like your property, and then you're trying to build new rooms and entertainment things in your estate to draw people in, to get new people to come in and be a part of like your parties and things like that, to try to build your wealth up. Like, you don't have a lot of wealth to start the game, so you're just trying to restore like your family name. Like, thematically, it's very interesting. You're trying to attract like a nobleman and a person of nobility to try to win them over and woo them over so you can marry them and be super popular or whatever. It just reminds me of Bridgerton as a board game. But it's super, like, mechanically it's really good, because you are putting out these little tiles that represent different rooms, and in order to go visit those areas, you have to be escorted by somebody. And so you have little workers that you live in your estate, and those workers get cycled. The only way that I could describe it is kind of like Terra Mystica, where you have to like get them into chambers before they're usable, and then once you spend them, they start back up in the first chamber, and then each turn they're going to move over into the next chamber. So you don't always have a perfect rotation of characters, so you have to really balance that out, your workers and stuff like that. A very interesting concept. I think this game plays really well. The cards are really cool. They give you points and all sorts of stuff, and then there's certain people that they're like gossipers, and people who, like, you come in, they know all the hot gossip, and they're really good because they provide very good abilities. But because they're gossipers, they actually negatively affect your points at the end of the game. Unless you get rid of that person by the end of the game, you can call that person out of the deck. It's like a little deck builder. It's got a lot of cool mechanics in it. Very fun game. It ain't the prettiest looking game as far, not production quality, but it looks bland. It's just a bunch of squares and a bunch of bland meeples. I think you can buy like sticker packs to try to make the meeples look nicer, but ultimately I think it's a good experience. I really enjoy playing this game, and it's made it this high on my list because it's a fantastic game. That's Obsession, and that is my number 71, and that is the end of this list. Let me know in the comments section some of your favorite games that you've played this year, and put it in the comments section, any games that you think I should try out. And also in the comments section, put any ideas you guys have for other videos you guys want to see on the channel. Right now I just mainly do top 10s. It's just the easiest thing for me to do with the time frame that I have. I think a lot of people who come in don't realize that I do this as a part-timer. I'm not a full-time content creator. I have a full-time job, and then I do this on the side, and I just don't have the time to sit here and prepare like 6 videos a day. But I would love to actually branch out and do some new content. But let me know, what kind of videos do you want to see? What kind of top 10s do you want to see? What other types of videos you want to see? And yeah, it'll be a fun time. So anyways, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. All of these things help the channel. Trying to get to 20,000 subscribers, so make sure you guys subscribe and share this with your friends. Anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. See you guys later.